Welcome to the Wednesday, November 18th, 2020 electronic meeting of the Ann Arbor Transportation Commission. This meeting is being held electronically to protect public health and safety due to the COVID-19 virus and to comply with orders issued by the Governor, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Washtenaw County Health Department. We intend to conduct this meeting similarly to an in-person meeting. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 206-337-9723 and enter meeting ID number 915-9624-1857. This information is also available on the published agenda and in the public notices section of the city website. And now I will, and I just also want to say, we'll have Kayla call the roll.
All right, thank you, Molly. So I have a couple of announcements before calling the roll. I wanted to welcome our new council representative. So thank you, Councilmember Briggs, for being here this evening and for joining us as our newest member to the Transportation Commission.
Thanks, I'm super excited to be here.
Wonderful, thank you. And another announcement is regarding regrets received. So Commissioner Margolis is unable to join us this evening due to a conflict with the Board of Education meeting. I will now call the roll. Please say here when your name is called. Commissioner Boland.
Here.
Councilmember Briggs.
Here.
Commissioner Felt.
Here.
Commissioner Hadumaki.
Here.
Commissioner Hull.
Here.
Commissioner Kleinman.
Here.
Commissioner Parsons. Commissioner Parsons. I can see that you're on a call. I'll come back to you so we can get an audible response. Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Summers. Sergeant Bill Clark.
Here.
Commissioner Crawford.
Here.
Commissioner Dolan. Commissioner Hess.
Here.
Commissioner Stupka. And I'll come back to Commissioner Parsons. Looks like he's dropped off the call. And Commissioner Summers, who has just joined us. Commissioner Summers, are you able to unmute? I didn't catch that. If you are able to unmute and say here for the attendance record, please.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wonderful, thank you. We do have a quorum, and we will come back to Commissioner Parsons when we see that he's back on the call.
Looks like he might be back.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move to public comment to give him a minute to get audio connected, or I'm sorry, to the consent agenda. So back to you, Molly.
Okay, so before we move into that, I just also want to welcome Councilmember Briggs. I'm so glad that you're here as our representative from the council, and also take a moment to thank and acknowledge Councilmember Griswold for all of the time that she put in her year as or 2 years as the representative to Transportation Commission. So yes, now moving on to the approval of the consent agenda. Are there any modifications to the consent agenda? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Great. And can I have a second?
Seconded.
Commissioner Hadumaki. Okay. And then we don't do roll call vote. We're all gonna raise our hands. Okay. So I'm gonna ask everyone to physically raise their hand. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, consent agenda passes. Now we're going to move into an opportunity for public comment. This is an opportunity for people to speak for up to 3 minutes. So please call 206-337-9723 and enter meeting ID number 915-9624-1857. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand, please press *9 on your phone. You'll hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Are there any people on the call right now?
Not currently.
Okay, great. And as we have done in the past, because it can take a little time to get through, if someone pops in later for public comment, we will make space to hear that.
Yes, and if I can briefly circle to roll call, and Commissioner Parsons, if you can say here for the attendance record.
There should be.
Here. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yes, we can.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you. Great, so we now invite Transportation Program Manager Eli Cooper and Transportation Plan Consultant Stacy Meekins to present the Comprehensive Transportation Plan update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. It's a great pleasure that I have to present the final draft City Transportation Plan update for your consideration this evening. As you may recall, at the last presentation, I concluded with the lengthy next steps. This is the first of those next steps to bring the document back to you. Stacy will highlight the changes that have made since the draft that was put online about a month ago. Once we're through with the presentation and conversation with the Commission, we're looking for your recommendation to move this document to the City Planning Commission to begin the statutory county adjacent community review process. We have received some comments after Friday afternoon's publication of this draft. Those changes and the changes that may occur from the conversation this evening may or may not be able to be amended in before we get to the Planning Commission on December 1st. So the fact is that the adjoining community county review statutorily is 65 days. So there's plenty of time between the materials that came in over this weekend and the conversation that we'll have with you and other bodies as we move forward. Without taking up more of the evening agenda, I'm going to turn it over to Stacy, who will walk you through a handful of slides highlighting the changes since last month's draft, and we'll both be available for questions. Stacy?
Thanks, Eli. So I do just have a couple of slides, as Eli mentioned. You all saw a broader presentation last month, and just wanted to share with you some of the significant updates since that time. So I'll just jump right into that. This page, or double page, this spread here is new. This was a placeholder in the last version until we got enough comments in that we were confident with how this map would look. So we just wanted to put a summary up front in the document of the capital projects that are contained in this plan. So it's shown as corridors primarily for the sake of presentation, but it does include more spot improvements as well. So the crosswalks that you've seen in the plan and focus intersections, things like that. We got several comments during the CAC about equity and how this plan is addressing equity. And so we thought that we should call it out here to kind of orient how it's being addressed throughout the plan. We didn't create a specific equity section because we really just tried to weave it in throughout the strategies. So there's just a little explanation up front about how the plan addresses equity, and also recognizing that equity is a regional issue and not only a city issue. We also got some comments primarily from the TAC that we really, as a city, that this plan should emphasize speed limit reduction as a key policy strategy. And we went back and reviewed the language and reviewed the strategy and felt that everything that we had proposed is in line with NACDO. We did add a little bit to that specific part of the strategy, but instead of making any major changes to what we were proposing, since it is in line with what NACDO recommends, we just elevated it to give it more emphasis and show that it is a key priority of the city. So the changes here are that it's now focused on first, and we include this graphic, which was included in the mobility fact book, about the effect of speed on fatalities and serious injuries, and then this sidebar here. We also included a new sidebar on the connector to reflect the work that's been done to date, and to also demonstrate that this still is in consideration and something that the university is looking at. It wasn't specifically, pulled into the strategy before this last version. And then we also got several comments on the 20-minute neighborhood recommendation and what that means, and what the city, where spatially the 20-minute neighborhoods are currently. And so we added this spread to break it down. The map on the right shows the overall 20-minute neighborhoods, which are the darker purple. Those are the areas where people do have better access to grocery stores, parks, retail, and schools combined. And we also, on the left, then broke it out to show you where people have better access to those assets individually. And then also, last but not least, we had not had the capital investment section in the last version that you saw. We asked for feedback from the TAC and the CAC and the public on these metrics, and got primarily a thumbs up on all of those metrics. And so we tied cost to those. And the way we've presented this here is the strategy and the relevant metric that we're costing out are on the left, in the left column. The middle column shows a cost overview on an instance basis. So it might be a per mile cost if it's a corridor, or per intersection. Sometimes it is per instance, per location. Sometimes it was per study or per hub, you see here. So the idea there is just to give you a sense of how much they cost on an individual basis, but then also tying that to the metrics. What does that mean from an annual investment standpoint that the city would have to invest to get to these metrics? So those are all the major changes. We did also, I'm not sure if we even captured all of the very minor edits, but these are kind of significant enough that I wanted to bring them to your attention. And some of you had provided these specific comments, so please take a look at what we have added and make sure that it captures your recommendation adequately, and if not, let us know. So we made changes to the traffic calming approach language of that strategy on page 40. Signal timing discussion, tweaked that language to focus more on timing signals to the progression of people walking downtown and people biking on significant bike corridors, as opposed to the previous language had suggested signal timing correlation to speed limit. And not that it shouldn't also be correlated to speed limit, they should all go hand in hand, but to focus more specifically on bike progression on those key corridors and downtown for the pedestrians. We did add a qualification to the bike network language to suggest that the bike network that is presented is based on the data that we have to date and the opportunities that we know about to date, but that should new opportunities arise, those should be considered. So basically the qualification here is meant to suggest that this map is not the holy grail, it's not the end all be all, and could be modified in the future. We did also add language about MDOT routes and working with MDOT to ensure that they are focused on capacity and not just for cars, that they're focused on if they are adding lanes or capacity to their highways, that they focus also on moving people and not just moving vehicles. We changed the previous language that talked about transit-oriented development to transit-supportive zoning and disassociated it with the transportation demand management. And we added a strategy as well to look at a freight strategy and consider the impacts of the changes that are happening in the freight sector. So we do have some final edits to make. I don't know if I should call them final. I guess there's a long review process here. So we do have more edits to make. One thing that I specifically wanted to point out was that we do need to add an acknowledgements page. There were a lot of people who provided a lot of input to this plan. This plan is truly a plan that was developed by the community, and so didn't mean to leave that out, and do want to recognize all of those people who put their time in. We are scheduled to go to the Planning Commission on December 1st. Oh, just back up to the edits. As Eli also mentioned, we continue to get comments in, so we're still reviewing some of the later comments that have come in. We're still coordinating with the ride and still expecting some feedback, hopefully from MDOT, in particular on the speed limits. So there's continuing coordination that's happening, but we are scheduled to go to the Planning Commission on December 1st, which then kicks off that county and adjacent community review period, after which point the plan would be brought back to you all, the Transportation Commission, before going to the Planning Commission again and hosting a public hearing, and then finally the City Council. Eli, anything to add? Eli, did you have anything to add to that, or any other things that I noted?
Nothing at this time, just that the meeting on the 1st with the Planning Commission would then initiate the step that the commission would request that the City Council forward the document to the adjoining communities for review. So there is it's not a one-step, it's a two-step process. Otherwise, we turn it back, Madam Chair, to you for questions or comments by the commissioners. Thank you.
Great, thank you both. So yeah, are there any questions or comments? No, yeah, just ask you to raise your hands. Commissioner Hall.
Yeah, so I know last time I brought up that the AAA TA thing only talked about Monday through Saturday frequencies and didn't talk about Sunday, and I'm not sure if it talked about evenings either. And I felt like that was an important thing to address because frequently that's when transit is not available. And I looked at this draft and I saw it was still unchanged. Is there any plans to revisit that?
We'll bring that up with AAATA. We have a coordination call with them on Monday.
Okay. Yeah, because the text does not even reference any goals for Sundays, and I'm not sure it does for evenings as well. Right now, I'm having trouble bringing it up because it's such a big file, but.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hadamaki.
Thank you. So I've been really excited about the idea of the 20-minute neighborhood, but over the last couple of weeks, I've seen multiple articles about cities, including Paris and I think Eugene, Oregon, that are advertising themselves as 15-minute cities. I don't know if this is a race to some kind of ridiculous or unachievable goal, but is there an appetite for, considering 15-minute for these 4 amenities as opposed to 20? Was there a reason 20 was picked? I just, over the last couple of weeks, I've seen multiple references to 15-minute cities. Is that the new big thing?
Yeah, I can, there is a reason that we stuck with 20, that we went with 20 and have stuck with it. And it was primarily that Detroit was using 20-minute city several years ago, and they kind of kicked off a similar goal. And we felt that we wanted to align with the regional approach, and also feeling that 20-minute neighborhoods is probably a little bit more realistic and more achievable. And it's only been of recent, as you noted, that there's been some press about the 15-minute city. So that's the background. I think that a 15-minute city is not a bad goal, but I think a 20-minute walk is also a very reasonable walk. And so that's the background of why we had a 20-minute city.
Great. Thank you. Did you have another question or?
Yeah, just a quick follow-on to that. The maps, the 4 individual maps for the 4 different amenities, just it's really, you can't really see the road network on it. The purple kind of washes everything out. So I don't know if it's possible. It's a nitpicky thing, I understand, but to maybe make the roads brighter white or something so you can see. The overall one is perfectly visible, but the 4 individual ones aren't.
Okay.
Other comments or questions? Oh, yeah, Commissioner Parsons.
Thanks. Sorry, my technical difficulties mean I can't actually see other people's faces. I can see Molly right now. So if people are nodding, I'm not ignoring them. I just can't see them. So I'm hoping to run through 3 things sort of in sequence and get Stacy to respond to, or we can discuss. First thing though, before I do that, thank you very much, Stacy and Eli. I think that we're all thrilled by this plan for the most part, and we're talking about sort of small things to tweak. So the first 2 things I want to bring up is like specific language tweaks, like 1 sentence different. And you already addressed one of those with the bike routes. I'm going to come back to that one in a second. It's the first one is specifically on page 38 when you talk about the exploring 20-mile-an-hour speed limits through the state. I fully support that. I think that's absolutely important. The specific language that you used was to quote, lobby for authority to set 20-mile-an-hour limits for school zones. I would like us to just cut for school zones out of that and just have it, staff can determine where those need to go. So it's a very minor tweak, and I'm hoping the body thinks it's relevant and maybe something to keep in mind. The other specific language change is to the bike routes, and I very much appreciate including the language that you did when it comes to all ages and abilities. That final sentence that you used on page 63 in that paragraph to open things up, that this isn't the end all be all. What I would like is a sentence instead that says, quote, additional routes and connections should be pursued by a dedicated committee through the Transportation Commission. So that it's cemented, we're going to continue to look at this, that this is not the end all be all, but we are going to tweak this and move it forward. And I know it seems like a small, like minor tweak, but the residents in this town really do focus in on the words, and I think it's important to leave as much flexibility into this plan as we can. It's a great plan, but to allow some more flexibility would be great. The last thing that I want to point out, the 20-minute neighborhood, and this is not a question at all, and I'm sorry, I'm just rambling, so allowing you time to respond, Stacy. I really apologize. But the 20-minute neighborhoods, what I think is eye-opening for me is that we do great with parks, we do okay with schools, we're not good in retail, and we're terrible in grocery. And any family that needs to connect those 4 things up in any given trip, which I think a lot of us do as we multitask, any one of those is going to be a barrier to going out on a bike or walk or bus. If any of those pieces is missing, right, they all sort of tumble down. So I thought that was really useful, and I really appreciate it. I think we should keep it in. I appreciate Commissioner Hakamaki's suggestion that we include the roadways so we can better orient it. But overall, I really appreciate it. So sorry, Stacey, I'll turn it over to you and see what others might chime in with.
Yeah, we're not going back to open and see if anybody else has a comment on Brad's.
Sorry, we're going back out.
Respond. So on the 4 school zones, I think you mentioned that before, and I think I maybe misunderstood the comment. So I think that's an easy change as long as everybody else is okay with that. On the bike language, I didn't write fast enough, so if you wouldn't mind sending me that actual language, that would be really helpful. And then to your observation on the 20-minute neighborhood, I think that's interesting too, but I think it also kind of is logical that, you know, the grocery and the retail is something that the city probably has less control over, specifically the grocery. And hopefully there are some tools that you can use to rectify that, but it's not specifically city property that you can open your own city-owned grocery store, for instance. So yeah, it's not surprising, but now hopefully you have some tools that or data at least, to use to develop some tools to try to fix that.
I very much appreciate that, Stacey. Thank you.
Commissioner Hadamaki.
Thanks for a second chance. So I only found, I only noticed one instance of this, but there might be others where the targets which are stated in each section, which are really useful, and I like putting numbers in the targets. For the bike network, adding for the all ages, all abilities network, it says a target of 4 miles per year, but in the text, I think if you add up what's needed over the next 10 years, it's about 76 miles. And so I just, I mean, yes, you know, maybe some years there will be 15 miles added, I don't know, but if you only work with 4 miles a year as a goal, you know, over the next 8 or 9 years where the target exists, you know, we're going to be less than half of the stated goal for the network as a whole. So I don't know if there's any consideration or appetite for increasing the annual target from 4 to something that could more easily get us close to the 76 that's in the text as described as what we need.
Yeah, that was, yes, I'll double check those numbers. It's kind of this triangulation of, we developed those metrics and then we developed the costs, and then we thought, oh my gosh, that's not going to work. And so I think I just did the wrong math to try to align the metrics with a longer time frame in order to bring the costs down to something a little bit more reasonable than what we had originally proposed. So that's one in particular that I'm going to go back and double check. And we certainly don't want to recommend targets that don't get you to the ultimate goal. So thanks for pointing that out. You're not the only one who's pointed that one out. We'll definitely be looking into that.
Councilmember Briggs.
Thank you. Excited to be here, and I sent out a rather messy marked up document, so sorry, Ms. Coleman and Mr. Cooper, about it has my highlights plus like little sticky notes plus random stuff in it, but and a lot of it. So, but I'm not going to try to go. I'm trying to figure out which ones of those comments are relatively are useful to bring up here tonight for discussions. Overall, obviously, it's a great plan. Kind of following up on that last comment, it does feel to me that there might be a need to think a little bit more about what our bicycling goals are. We've done a lot of work on pedestrian connectivity and safety over the last decade or so, and we have 20% mode share, which is incredible, but we have 4% or so, I think, on bike. And so if we're talking about getting to, 50% reduction in trips, obviously beyond transit, a lot of that's going to come through our bicycle connectivity. And so if there's an opportunity to increase that, I think that that's where we're really going to be trying to ambitiously move in the community. And so figuring out how we get there, I think is supportive. I also noticed that I think it says in the text 4 miles, and then later kind of in the back end, I think it says 5 miles. So there just might be playing around with numbers there, and one got kept and one didn't. So that's, yeah. So that was one piece. This may be a piece to bring out more with Planning Commission when it goes there. I was excited to see the transit supported district piece get mentioned in it, and there were a couple other definite land use recommendations, but I do wonder, especially since our master planning process has been delayed by a couple of years, this may be whatever has come out of this planning process and has community buy-in behind it. I think the more that we can get embedded into this plan to provide good guidance for our planning processes is going to really help Planning Commission as well in the next couple of years, and us be able to coordinate better. So the more that we can get in here that seems reasonable, I think with explicit detail, will provide us better guidance over the next couple of years. Let's see. One piece that I wondered about that I didn't see any guidance on, and this is where it starts getting challenging to actually implement this. I didn't see much guidance on trade-offs. So, at one point there's sort of a discussion of we need to add on-street parking for traffic calming. But we know just recently on Scioto Church, for example, we're removing on-street parking to make way for bike lanes. And so, or trade-offs where it becomes a trade-off between modes where, how do we prioritize a car travel lane versus advancing our system? And there's not much guidance in here around that. I don't know if it's a bullet point in terms of needing more policy guidance on this, or if this is something that can come out of this process, but any thoughts as to why that's not included in here?
I think that's very case specific. And so maybe we could provide some guidance on how that happens, how those trade-offs get disputed at the project level. But I would say also that, and so maybe this is language that could be added that I'm just thinking off the top of my head, so bear with me. I think, we've outlined which routes are priorities for biking in particular. We have some transit priority routes. And so I think those should play into the trade-offs, and that should drive the designs and the discussion around the trade-offs on specific projects.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that it's sort of project based on this. I know it's been quite some time now, but I know, a decade ago or so when I was doing more research on this, it seemed like some communities had passed resolutions that sort of prioritized mode share in terms of how investments were going to be made, or some were really guiding it by their carbon neutrality goals. And so when push came to shove about how we're going to actually prioritize our investments, I guess my question is that, do we need some sort of policy guidance here in our community to help advance these goals? Or is there some other tool or metric that we're planning on using because we're going to face these problems all the time? And I think one of the challenges that I think we face as a community is that we go out, they're so project-based and so neighborhood-based that we are, not that we shouldn't have community input on these, but if we allow a debate over every mid-block crossing that we want to put in, it's challenging to advance a system very quickly sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are some examples of like Cambridge, Massachusetts, for instance, has now a mandate to add bike facilities, protected bike facilities, I think, specifically. I think also do tie a dollar amount or a percentage to those types of improvements. So that could certainly be added. I think we had kind of floated that through the engagement process at the not with the public, but with the TAC, maybe the CAC, I'm not sure, and just didn't really have a strong conclusion on it. So that's why you don't see it in the plan. So I think I'm looking for guidance from you all, not just the commission, but staff, on whether that's necessary and what that would look like in Ann Arbor.
I mean, I think, at least for my part, I know that we're essentially trying to move our community forward really rapidly. And so the more that we are able to figure out, okay, what's our priority here? That's helpful. Let's see. There's a lot of minute notes that I'll just let you guys go through in my piece, in the notes that I sent in. Sorry, Kitty Cat has comments as well.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there's also, I was wondering, I didn't see any internal recommendations around what sort of work this might mean for the city internally for staff in terms of how we might need to shift our processes or a CIP prioritization or anything like that to try to get to a more, I mean, essentially we're really changing our transportation network and trying to do it really quickly. And it's going to take us forever to do that if we're kind of following the same past practices. So are there changes that we need to be making, or, you know, are there different bullet points or recommendations that would be helpful for us to be considering as kind of internal steps to be taking?
Eli or Raymond, do you have any?
So, you know, keeping in mind that this plan is a major step forward from the modal plan that we've had until now, and as at the policy level gets set that these are our goals, these are our targets. Clearly, we're integrating the active transportation with motorized transportation in this document, and that we as staff will take the overarching policy guidance that ultimately works its way into the final document and then have to work through those internal adjustments. A lot of that will be organized, if you will. I hate to be circular, but it goes back to policy. So here's what the policies are in the plan. Here's the current processes, and these are our internal operating methods that may need to be adjusted, and that will probably require policy direction. So although we're moving this plan forward through the commission, we expect to be back and, you know, as Bradley said earlier, it's an ongoing process. I agree wholeheartedly, and the issue of what the emphasis is, for right now it's creating the framework, the policy template, and then these steps will logically follow as we move forward over time.
Great, thank you. And that sort of leads into, I don't know why I didn't ask this maybe at the very first meeting that I went to as kind of a community member around this. But since this is an update to our comprehensive update to our transportation plan, and obviously this is a Vision Zero focus, and it's I wholeheartedly support the emphasis of this plan, but there's kind of this conspicuous absence of discussion around kind of asset management around roadways or bridges or anything like that. And so just kind of curious how that interfaces with this plan.
And the plan itself, again, is organized around the policy and what our objectives are. There are other groups within the department that are focused on the goals that have been articulated for Fix Our Roads. And I believe it's by 2025, X% will be at a level of service good or better in terms of pavement. And so those decisions, again, are arranged by the council and the policymakers, and that this plan will be setting out an ambitious agenda for advancing the safety, the mobility, the accessibility, the sustainability, as is described as the values that we heard through our process. And so through our process, we didn't necessarily shy away from fix the roads, but that issue has always been more of a, as you described it, an asset management issue, not what are the goals and aspirations for our systems. Although clearly one of the things that we did here in the public engagement is the condition of the pavement, particularly in the bicycle lanes, is of keen interest to assuring that the lanes are comfortable for all users.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's actually about where in the plan that I was like, I was realizing that I think our goals for the pavement quality and bike lanes may be higher than what we have found might be achievable on our roadways in general. If I'm remembering my facts from orientation correctly, I don't know if that's true or not. And just wondering if we're setting an achievable goal there in terms of how it interfaces with our other ability to sort of realistically manage our assets, I guess. But also the reality is that historically we've prioritized kind of this other segment of kind of our transportation system and the trade-offs of where we spend our dollars. I guess I'm surprised there's not more of a mention around the tension of that within this plan, around the real tension, and how we might be able to make some of those decisions. And then finally, on the dollars piece, I wondered, the piece that I was wondering, is there real merit? Maybe this is in terms of just a desire to educate the community members about why it is that we can't just go out and do this all at once, but the reference to dollars amounts within the plan about how expensive different treatments are going to be. One, I guess I wonder if that's necessary, or if it is necessary, it might be useful to talk about what it costs to actually just do, resurface 1 mile of roadway. So there's some comparison metric, because otherwise it's sort of nickel and diming the non-motorized improvements.
Yeah, you're talking about that like toolbox section?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not intended to come off as nickel and diming, but I also think it's just inconsistent with the rest of the plan. So we're going to remove the cost from that section.
Oh, that's great. Because there was also sort of the piece around street reconstruction, where I know maybe if you went out and sort of did a road reconfiguration where you weren't planning on it, it might cost, maybe it would cost that amount of money. I don't know. But for example, the Green Road reconfiguration recently that got turned down, and my understanding was that it was basically about a decision about whether or not how to paint the stripes back on the road, and really the cost of that was, my understanding, if I got it right, was $0. It was just a matter of how to put the paint back down. So sometimes when we're out doing the work, it's not necessarily an additional cost.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And you can look at all my other sticky notes. I think those are the big pieces I thought might be useful to bring up here. Oh, maybe one more. There were some pieces, I guess, in the notes that I sent along around just why we had something in long term versus medium term. But maybe the one piece that I did wonder that might get moved up and maybe relevant for this discussion right now, I think equity, getting that into the CIP process, that's maybe listed as a 2025 mid-range goal. And since we're in the process of we've just gotten our new software for the CIP, and I guess I'd hate to see that not get implemented until 2025. I can imagine maybe there are reasons that it couldn't get integrated this year, but 2023 seems like the furthest out that should possibly go. So that would be a short-term recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you. I can keep talking, but I know this is getting boring.
Not to me, but yeah,
I'm really excited about this.
No, thank you for spending so much time reviewing it, and I've skimmed your comments, and we'll take a deeper dive into them.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just to clarify process from here on out, because we've given feedback has been integrated. We're now giving feedback on that new draft. We have to stop at some point asking you to make changes on our behalf. And so my understanding is that what's happening next is that this is going to the Planning Commission. And what we are going to do tonight is vote on recommending that City Council, after that Planning Commission meeting, forward it out to the various community partners that also need to review the plan. And then there will be presumably another cycle of feedback. Am I getting that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So are there any last, preferably short questions or comments before we move into taking a vote? Yes, Commissioner Bowman.
Commissioner Crawford, I know you had your hand up for a while, and I think you wanted to respond to something that Councilmember Briggs had raised. Is that still?
In the interest of moving along, I'll follow up afterwards. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I completely missed that. And Commissioner Boland.
My question is just about what it is we're voting on. I'm still confused about that. So are we, by asking council to forward it, are we also saying we approve this plan?
Determine that it's appropriate for distribution to county and adjoining communities. And that they have an opportunity to review and comment. The state statute for master plan updates and adoptions require the public hearing to be held after that. So given that there's still opportunity for comments of others, we want to leave the door ajar for the types of changes that we're hearing this evening. We're not going to be adding substantial new elements, but if there's language clarifying or minor adjustments that can be made, I think the framework as it's presented is what we're anticipating will move to the county and adjoining communities, and that with responses to the types of questions we're hearing today, we should be able to convene a public hearing after that process is complete, come back to the commission as part of that public hearing process, and then we go through a formal adoption process through the Planning Commission and City Council.
Thank you. That helps.
Can you remind us of what the approximate target dates are for these various steps?
So the target date that I have for certain is a conversation with the administrator to the Planning Commission that we have December 1st. I'm not aware of the process between the Planning Commission and City Council, whether it's going to be released for adjoining communities in late December or in early January. Statutorily, once it's released, the 63 days specified in the statute. And now if they all want to respond by January 12th, that's great. But typically what happens is the time tolls. That's 2 months plus. And then there's a mandatory 15-day public notice before a public hearing. So we're looking at March, April, best case, to begin the two-step dance between the Planning Commission and the City Council for final adoption, putting us back in work with the Transportation Commission, probably about the time we would be getting adjoining community feedback to say, okay, this is what we've heard from you, this is what we have heard from others, this is what we're taking to the public hearing. before the Planning Commission, and hopefully we can align our interests, and then that will lead to I want to say a rapid adoption, but I would say a regular adoption schedule.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. So I believe then we're ready to move on to actually take a vote. I'm pausing and looking at everyone's little box to make sure I haven't missed anyone. So what I'm going to ask for is a motion to recommend that the Planning Commission and City Council authorize distribution of the draft A2 Moving Together Toward Vision Zero Transportation Plan to adjoining jurisdictions and stakeholders in accordance with the Michigan Municipal Planning Act, PA 33 of 2008, and Chapter 8 of the Ann Arbor Code of Ordinances. So can I have, yes, so Commissioner Boland?
So moved.
And I see a second from Councilmember Briggs. Any further discussion on this before we vote? Okay. Great. So all those in favor of the motion, please physically raise your hands. All those opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thanks, everyone. And thank you especially to Stacy and Eli for all of the explanation on this. I know it's been a big process. I've really appreciated, as we've watched this move forward, seeing the feedback that has come from Transportation Commission, seeing that incorporated into the report, and seeing the changes that have happened. And it's been great to see. So thank you.
And I'd like to just thank you as well. We appreciate having an active and engaged policy body to bounce some of these issues off of and provide us the policy direction that we are seeking. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so next we're going to invite Kayla Coleman to present the draft Transportation Commission 2021 calendar of meeting dates.
Thank you, Molly. So you should now see on your screens the draft outline for the 2021 calendar. So the Transportation Commission typically meets the third Wednesday of each month. And as it turns out, in 2021, it looks like we will be able to hold all of our meetings on the third Wednesday. Occasionally, we've run into conflicts with holidays or overlap with another board or commission that we needed to adjust. Oh, my PDF closed. It said I have an error. So I'll talk to IT about that. But you do have the document in your agenda materials, and I'll try to pull it up one more time. But I think we can move into if there's any questions about those dates that were presented or any concerns about the calendar. I'm happy to discuss that, and otherwise we'd be looking for the commission to take an action accepting that as your 2021 calendar.
Commissioner Hall.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention, because I know obviously, as they said, like these meetings, some of them may be virtual. I mean, I anticipate there still will be for at least part of next year. And I'm wondering, did you account for like when we do move back in person, like there's not going to be conflicts with other boards at that point? Because I mean, obviously the conflicts aren't a problem now, but will be if we move back in person.
Yes, thank you. That's a great question, because in theory, we would like to be back in council chambers at some point in 2021. And I've confirmed that the space is available on all of these dates. There aren't other commissions that have booked it. So
Okay.
We shouldn't have any issues there.
I just wondered, because I was thinking maybe they just booked them all, assuming we're on Zoom, and then we go back in person and there's another commission meeting,
Right.
and we have to change on short notice or something.
Nope. Thank you for raising that.
Kayla, can you unshare so I can see everyone? Yeah, or so people can just speak up.
Of course.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, great. So then I think we vote on this too, right?
That's right.
So is there a motion to approve the draft Transportation Commission 2021 calendar of meeting dates as presented? Commissioner Hall, and I'll take a second from Howden Mackey. So all those in favor, raise your hands. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Great, so that passes. Let's see, what's next? Oh, wait, are we really already on to staff? No.
We are onto the annual report.
Annual report, there we go. I always scroll too far. So we now invite Kayla Coleman and Gage Belko to present the draft Transportation Commission 2020 annual report.
And Gage is going to kick this off. He's been doing the bulk of the work on pulling this together. So I'll turn it over to Gage to talk us through the draft that we have.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for letting me be here. You all can see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is your annual report. I've compiled all of your motions and actions, featured agenda items, and presentations. So I'm just going to go through really quickly what's in here page by page. I created this at a glance page here, which documents an overview of the topics that have been brought up throughout the year, as well as some commission logistics that have occurred. Going forward, there's some placeholder text, but you have from the chair forward, and then also a commission roster, which will be updated, no worries. This is coming at the end here. We'll be getting a Zoom screen photo shoot to plop right here on this page. And then moving into motions and actions, there is some white space towards the end. We're not there yet, but that will be filled. And then hopefully including some additional pictures as well. Going on to featured agenda items and presentations from staff. And then finally, some reports and recommendations that have been put forward by the Transportation Commission. It's been I guess a light documentation year. You all have been working very hard, but the report is here. And towards the end, you have some attachments of your ordinance and some commissioner involvement in city process. That is it. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. I see that Commissioner Hall has a question or comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was looking through this and saw a few things. I noticed that the placeholder text for commissioner statements where it's like Lauren Ipsum, blah, blah, blah. I'm assuming that's going to be replaced. And
it sure will, yeah.
The other thing I saw is there's no actions listed for July, and I'm wondering, is that because there actually was no actions at the July meeting, or because they forgot to put one?
No, that's correct. There weren't any.
And the other thing I noticed is there was a couple spelling things I just saw when you were scrolling acknowledgements, and I saw Brett Hadamaki's name is spelled differently in a couple different places.
Yes.
But,
we will comb through for consistency. Yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out, though. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So just a few minor things.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Hull. So you're right. There's placeholder text, and that is just there until we receive the note from the chair and a couple of statements from commissioners. And the July item is also correct. We did have a meeting in July, but it was all informational topics. There weren't any actions taken. And thank you for looking closely and noticing spelling errors, and that we'll make sure to move this into a program that has a spell check, because the InDesign program that we created to end does not offer spell check. So good catch. Thank you.
And I think Commissioner Hadamaki, did you have?
No, nothing. Thanks to Commissioner Hall for pointing out my name. I blame my parents, but yeah, my first name has just the one T. It really. Yep. Well, thanks.
It's glaring right there in front of us.
And I'll get you the statement that you asked me. I think I have another week or two, but I'll get you that statement for the end.
Perfect. I appreciate that.
Great. It's great. This looks really nice. It's great to see it all laid out. There was stuff that was long enough ago that I had forgotten was this year, like the crosswalk thing. So I like having this opportunity to really take a look at what's happened over the course of the year. So.
And it looks like we have a hand raised from Commissioner Felt.
Oh, yes.
I
Right.
think, yeah, I think the electronic hand raises are a little harder to see sometimes.
So I have a couple of comments. The first of which is that I don't know if the photos are also placeholders, but the two photos, one referencing healthy streets and the other being a street closing, are probably two of the more triggering photos that we could have. And so I would suggest that we change those
Sure,
to something
a bit
more
more
active
neutral.
and positive
Yeah,
that people will actually like. And the other is, I don't know if it's perspective that makes me go, wait a minute, this is odd. But the motions section, it seems like the focus becomes who made the motion and who seconded it, rather than the motion itself. And so I think all of that language should be eliminated about who made what, but rather there was a motion, or that it was agreed to, or some other type of friendlier language that emphasizes what we did rather than who motioned it. But I look forward to seeing the regular report otherwise.
Thank you, Commissioner Felt. If I would encourage any commissioners, if you have any photos from this year of any more active transportation items that you'd like to share that you would like to contribute to your annual report, please send those along. Since we weren't doing a lot in person, we weren't having meetings that we might have taken photos at, we weren't doing much that wasn't from behind our Zoom screen. We didn't have as many opportunities this year to be out in the field to capture those. So if you did get out and about, please do share those. But we'll look through other stock images and see what we can find. And I think that that's perfectly fine. If you'd like to adjust the report format going forward to just note the action and no longer include the person, that I see no issue with that either. We can make that change.
Sounds good. Other comments or questions?
Just real quick, I second that change that Linda Diane mentioned. Yeah.
Okay, great. I think that sounds good. And there's a chance too for others to send any feedback. We don't have to have it all to you tonight, correct?
Yeah, the action on this would be expected for the January meeting. So we wanted to get it to you this month because we were at a point where we were ready to share a draft, and that way we can put it back on the agenda in December if you'd like to discuss it again, and Molly, you and I can talk about that, or we'll just bring it back in January. We want to wait until then for the action because that's when we'll have closed out the whole year's worth of actions and agenda items.
Sounds good. So yeah, others feel free to share feedback or other thoughts. We have a little bit of time before we there's a lot of waving going on. Hold on 1 sec, Ren. I will do your braid in just a minute. So great. So there's nothing we have to vote on for this one. I'm just going to move us up right along to the next item, which is now we're moving on to staff updates, right? I didn't miss another one. So
that's right.
You received a staff report with project updates with agenda materials, and we're going to get a review of the highlights from Commissioner Hess.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. So again, just as a reminder, what we do is we go through and we provide kind of an update on the things that have changed from month to month on any given project. So you'll note some projects will fall off a list and then it will come back on. It just depends on what activity is occurring with those projects. So the November and December reports are always pretty exciting because you start to see a lot of things come to conclusion and completion as the construction season wraps up. Obviously, during the winter months, we can't do quite as much because there are restrictions that take place. But so you'll see a lot of things that show up now as complete. So the Allen Creek berm opening, the tunnel is now substantially complete and is open to the public. So yay, that was a big project. The annual sidewalk repair program work is expected to continue through mid-November. We're in mid-November, so I'm sure that's wrapping up any moment now. Annual street resurfacing project, you'll see that Granger is now listed as one of the completed sections, and everything is supposed to be done by the end of this month. Barton Drive, construction on this project is also complete. Ellsworth and Research Park Drive, Commissioner Hull, I know you asked about this last month. So directional boring was done earlier this year. And the infrastructure is on order. So the steel poles and mast arms are on order. Those are in back order. They'll come in a few months. The good news is we did all the work that needed to occur before the winter. So the concrete was poured, the directional boring is now done. So when those items come in, they can be installed. They don't have to wait till the next spring construction season to finish up that project. The rectangular rapid flashing beacons on Huron Parkway at both Glacier Way and Baxter Road. We are waiting for the streetlight installation before we finalize the installation of the actual RFBs. Fuller Court sidewalk gap. This was a change in timing. Construction is scheduled to begin in the spring of 2021. Scioto Church Road. This actually was, the language in your report is actually a little outdated. Council, as I understand it, did vote on this on Monday nights for the removal of the on-street parking in favor of the bicycle lanes. So that project is moving forward as directed by City Council, and construction is scheduled for spring of 2021. Sidewalk gaps, thank you to the voters of Ann Arbor for passing the new sidewalk millage on November 3rd. So the good news is there's now a dedicated fund source for new sidewalks. It doesn't necessarily have to be specially assessed. So that opens up a whole realm of possibility and hopefully takes away one of the more contentious points about new sidewalks. So right now we're working on how to prioritize those projects and which ones are moving forward in the CIP, and how we can leverage other funds to move as many of those projects along as possible. Street millage and new sidewalk millage, similarly, thank you again to the voters of Ann Arbor for passing the street millage. And so the good news is, our work on street, bridge, and sidewalk can continue. This new millage goes into effect in 2022. Healthy Streets, we are currently, my team is working with the DDA on the report back to City Council. You will see the full report at your December meeting. We're shooting to provide that to City Council at the first meeting in December, and you would see it at your meeting in December. So stay tuned for that. There's going to be a lot of data included and a lot of observations and impressions that were made, as well as a lot of input that was received on those. Lower Town Mobility Study, the big thing to highlight here is there is the second virtual public meeting on the project tomorrow night at 6 p.m. If any of you can join, that would be fantastic. The focus of this will be looking at existing conditions, and there will be small work group breakout sessions to generate ideas about future mobility options in the area. The Office of Sustainability and Innovations is doing some exciting things related to electric vehicles. So they're advocating for the addition of 100+ level 2 chargers within DDA garages. They're also looking to scale electric vehicle ownership in the community, as well as working on an electric vehicle readiness ordinance. There's also some updates on their bicycle discount program. So SICK Transit is in there, Human Electric Hybrids is in there, Arbor Vacuums is in there, all of which are offering either bulk buys or discounts for e-bikes or bicycle discounts in general, or even commuter packages, things of that nature. There was also a Transportation Power Hour that was hosted by the Office of Sustainability and Innovation on November 12th last week. And that was focused on electric vehicles, as well as some of the, how do we achieve that, A20 goal of reducing vehicle miles traveled by 50% and the remaining 50% of vehicles that are on the road, getting those to be electric. So there was some discussion around that. Traffic calming program submittals. You will see the Glenwood Road come before you at your next meeting on December 16th, and then we'll forward that to City Council in January. Based on the responses we received from the people within the polling area, it did receive a positive response. So that kind of advances it to recommendations from this body and then ultimately an action from council. And then I will skip the transportation plan update because you already received a lengthy update from Mr. Cooper and Stacey Meekins on that one. So Madam Chair, those are my updates. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any questions? Commissioner Felt.
under sidewalk gaps, it seemed like the wording was something about how you're going to be focusing on what's already designed and pulling the funding for that. But even that won't happen until the end of 2021. I'm wondering where the progress is on getting rid of some of the stairways that exist. And we started calling them sidewalk gaps. And I continue to be concerned that these are being lost in the process because they're not obvious gaps. So is it going to be many more years, or how to quicken that process so that we can get rid of those stairs, which I think we identified 6 or 7 places in the city where there are suddenly stairs. And I haven't gone out to check that they're still there, but I assume that they are still all there. So I'm wondering what that status is. Thanks.
Yes, Commissioner Felt, thank you for bringing that up. I know in speaking with Nick Hutchinson, the city engineer, the stairs is still top of mind for the city, obviously because this is an ADA compliance issue, and we want to make sure that, you know, our walking infrastructure is accessible to everyone. You know, some of the locations pose more challenges than others just because of the grades and where we're connecting to and what, you know, how easy it is to kind of retrofit a ramp or a connection that doesn't require the steps. So I know just about 2 months ago, Nick and I were working on, there's a Glen Court to Fuller, kind of across from the hospital complex. There's a set of stairs there. We were looking at some opportunities to eliminate those stairs for a connection. So it's definitely on there. I don't quite know about if the sidewalk gap millage is the appropriate funding source for that, or if we use a different funding source. But what I can do is I can circle back with Nick on that to see, you know, where those are falling in the program. And I suspect they'll show up on the CIP as well.
Yeah, thank you, Raymond. I was going to just add in that this year in the CIP, active transportation meetings, that did get added as a project in the CIP. So it's not being lost. It will be kept track of and ranked there.
Thanks.
Other questions or comments? Oh, yeah, Commissioner Parsons.
Thanks, Raymond, as always. I just wanted to share and verbalize, sort of in a formal setting, the advisory bike lanes that went in on some of the streets. I fully support them. I think they're awesome. I appreciate staff and everything that they're doing. But apparently these are a surprise to a lot of the community, and there's been some consternation about how they're applied and all that kind of stuff. So I noticed these aren't in the project updates, and probably because applying paint isn't expensive. Like, you know, we just don't equate it. But these sort of updates end up being for at least people that pass through this corridor, sort of a disruption. So maybe even we can include what I would deem sort of minor tweaks in project updates. If they impact throughways, we should probably include them here. The other thing to just mention, Raymond, man, I appreciate what you and your staff are doing, but I think education on these, or at least some, you know, information spread might have eased some of the difficulty in transitioning to these. I don't think they're a major road hazard or anything like that, but there's been people sort of up in arms. What I did notice is that when Granger tweaked their parking, there was like door hangers, and there was a website and a whole bunch of stuff, and that was just a matter of tweaking the parking situation. So I would love for staff to get ahead and do some due diligence when it comes to public outreach. But I do want to repeat, I fully endorse this road treatment. I think it's fantastic. I really am enthusiastic about it. So just, this is more to encourage maybe staff to outreach more and engage. But thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Commissioner Parsons, for bringing that up. That actually was an oversight on my part that I didn't elaborate more on both the Granger and the Summit advisory bike lanes. It was just, when we go through these, it's something that just escaped my attention. So what I will do, though, is I will add some language to next month's report, so at least it's captured and viewable to the public. Commissioner Parsons, I know you and I have talked about those. And to your second point, too, you're absolutely right. We need to do a better job of communicating the why behind a lot of these projects in advance, so that people have a better understanding of what they are, what they're meant to accomplish, and especially if there's something new that people aren't used to or familiar with, it goes a long way for us to kind of get the word out in advance about those. So we've had some internal discussions. Again, we're always learning in terms of how we can do a better job of that next time. And it is something that we hope to do a better job of in the future.
Awesome. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you.
Commissioner Hadamaki, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Following on what Commissioner Parsons just talked about with the Granger Road advisory bike lanes in particular, having or living just one block off of it, I get to see all of our neighborhood emails about it, and I'm happy to share that, the vast majority of the emails from within our neighborhood around Granger are complimentary and are interested in seeing if it achieves the goals that it sets out for. There's one person that just complained about the whole concept, and then there were a few people that complained about claiming to be blindsided by it. But from my perspective, we don't live on the street, so we didn't get the flyers, but we were still very aware of the information sessions. We went to both sessions at the senior center with Cyrus and Mr. Dykeman, and it's hard to really think about what more you could do. Like I said, there's a whole website dedicated to it, so don't get too down on yourself when people complain that I don't know what more you could do. If we don't even live there and we brought our two little kids to both sessions, I don't know what else to put. There was one speaking to confusion about the fact that this is a new treatment for Ann Arbor. There is signage on either end of Granger, and I suspect it's the same on the other street. However, this is something somebody just brought up, a neighbor brought up to me today. Those signs are kind of in from the end of the street, and there are other signs prior to it, like neighborhood watch signs. And maybe I think there's a couple of signs prior to here's how you use an advisory bike lane. And the proposal from this neighbor was putting the instruction sign up at the beginning, so people don't have to drive in some distance before they see the instructions. Just yesterday, I saw somebody pull in from Packard onto Granger, and they stopped, and you could, they pulled up a little bit, and you could see them stop, and they're looking at the sign, trying to figure it out, and then they slowly. So I don't know if there's some thought about the signage is good, but maybe moving it so that it's more prominent right when you're pulling in or when you're sitting at the light waiting to turn onto the street, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Hadamaki, for that. I will say that Granger, we did do a better job of engagement on that one because there was an existing capital improvement program, a resurfacing project along there. So there was already a natural engagement that was happening. And, I was kind of on the fringe of that. You mentioned, Cyrus and Dykeman, who were involved in that. That treatment, those advisory bike lanes came out of some of those discussions and some of the feedback we came from those meetings, and then those were communicated back out. I think the criticism that we didn't maybe communicate as well on Summit is well taken, because there wasn't a sort of complementary existing engagement opportunity that we were plugged into, and so when they went in, they were surprised to people who lived along that segment, and that's where we did a misstep on that one. But I appreciate you saying that on Granger we did a fairly decent job, and I would tend to agree. And then I'll look into the location of the signs, and I'll follow up with the engineers to see if there's some other opportunities to maybe locate those closer to the ends.
Other comments or questions? Commissioner Parsons, oh, okay, that was a thumbs up this time. Great, your camera came on, I wasn't sure. Great, so I think that's it for that then. Thank you very much. As always, this was really helpful. And then let's see, so moving on now to liaison reports. So any commissioners who specifically serve as a liaison to another body or organization are invited to provide brief reports and updates. Yes, Commissioner Smith.
Just wanted to draw attention to the attachments that were available, that we are updating routes for the 22nd. And we're also updating our Title VI program this month, and be happy to answer any questions if anybody had any.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Hall.
Yeah, I just was going to give my report, though. If someone had questions with the AAATA, they're welcome to ask it.
I don't see any. I think we're
okay,
good.
I guess I'll go ahead. Yeah, I was on the at the Commission on Disability Issues today. I represent them, and yeah, we were going to discuss the crosswalk law recommendation that we've kept delaying. We were going to wait for crash data, and we're reviewing the same crash data that we have here on the agenda. We did have some technical difficulties with our meeting because evidently it was set up wrong. It was set up as a webinar, and we couldn't participate in the normal way. And so we had to delay our items because in any case, the meeting wasn't noticed correctly and we didn't have quorum in part because of these issues. And yeah, so we'll be discussing that again at the next meeting. And yeah, I just wanted to point out, I noticed this meeting was set up as it said webinar as well, but it had all the normal features. And I'm just wondering if Denise had the issues with this, if you could talk to her. I don't know if there's something you did that sets this up as a webinar, but gives all the normal features as opposed to being essentially like a presentation. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, I just wanted to point that out. And also, one thing I just wanted to ask, this is kind of a request, is for when we have these big documents that are drafts that just get continuous updates on the agenda, it would be nice to have something clearly pointing to what has changed. Because yeah, if we get a 100-page document 3 months in a row, it can be hard to just sort out what's changed. And I noticed that the presentation actually did have that for the comprehensive transportation plan, but I didn't see that in the study guide, so I didn't think to look at the slides to find out. But that would be helpful for the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Hull. I can, first, your comment about how the Zoom webinar is set up, I can reach out to Denise and talk through that with her. We do use Zoom webinar for all the Transportation Commission meetings. So I'll get in touch and see if there's anything I can help with for the Commission on Disability Issues. And then in terms of pointing out what has changed in these documents, that's a really great point. And the slides did call attention to that, but we did not have those slides when we sent out the agenda packet last Friday. We just had those slides as of today. So we'll make note of that for future and get something like that available to you when the document goes out so that you know where to draw your attention, because that's completely valid. It would be very difficult to do a side-by-side comparison and find those changes without something to help you.
Thanks, Commissioner Hall. Yes, Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, there was one item on the council agenda on Monday night that I think folks here might be interested in, and that was discussion around whether a planning commission should work on a transit-supported district, and kind of a debate around a couple of different proposals. And council did decide to forward a request for planning commission to present changes to the UDC around a transit-supported district on our major transit corridors. So something that is tying together our work. Thought you guys would be interested in that. And I guess from my part, I know that there have been some recommendations that maybe haven't moved forward from Transportation Commission, and those might be, maybe I can talk to the chair and Ms. Coleman about which ones of those might be still of interest to present back to City Council for reconsideration.
That would be great. Thank you very much. I think that sounds like a great plan. Any other reports? And I think we can move on. Oh,
On that topic of things that were rejected previously, we might look at the road diets and the council policy about approval for road diets. I know that could come back. I feel like.
Yeah, there are a few things that I'm thinking of that we'll take a look in, and it might be useful too to look at the our annual report and see what I think there's some stuff in there as well. So I think now is the time for general commission member updates. So at this point, all commission members are invited to give updates. Commissioner Rowland, did I see your hand move, or you were just moving? Okay.
All right. I don't know if I'm moving. You might be able to hear me, Molly. I might move in a second.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out, and I didn't catch it at our October meeting, and maybe it wasn't included there, but I want to thank City Administrator Crawford for passing along the pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure assessment that Sam Schwartz did and how detailed it was. And I really appreciated all the addendums and all of the like physical documents so that you could read it all and actually make your own sort of conclusions that are not different from what was concluded there. I thought it was a really well-written piece, and wanted to highlight how much there's still to do, but we don't have to go back into crosswalk policy. We don't have to move backwards right now. It's moving forward where we can make things better. That's how I read this document. I just wanted to thank those who put it together for doing such care in doing so.
Thank you. Any other communications from commissioners? Okay, so now just a brief call for agenda items. A reminder if you have any agenda items to suggest, that this is an opportunity just to throw out the ideas. We're not going to dig deeply into what those might be now. We can talk about them more separately. And I think, Kayla, you were going to share what's sort of on deck that we have already planned out.
Yes, thank you. So what we have on deck for the December meeting is something Raymond mentioned during the staff report, traffic calming for Glenwood. We're expecting to have a resolution for action ready for next meeting. We also anticipate having an update about the Lower Town study. And we would intend to bring the 2021 work plan to the Transportation Commission for discussion. So if you have any work plan items in mind that you want to shoot to me by email in advance, please do. Otherwise, staff will prepare a draft work plan modeled after mostly what we've done the past few years. There are certain items we revisit annually, and then anything else that we know is coming. But this is a good opportunity for you to send those ideas to me as well. Those are the planned agenda items.
Yeah, Commissioner Hess.
Okay, and I believe we'll have that report on Healthy Streets. It's a question of if it's just a report or if you want discussion about it. I'm sure that the chair and Kayla will discuss about, what the flavor or what the desire would be on that.
I imagine that this crew is going to want to talk about it.
I suspect it is.
I was just going to say there's also the 7th Street Committee's recommendations. We hope to have those ready for you.
Yes, thank you.
For the next meeting.
Great. Any other agenda items for December specifically? Yes, Commissioner Parson.
Well, sorry, December maybe, but it might be ongoing too. It seems like over the last 6 months between the project update, not the project update, but the transportation update, as well as some of the things that staff is doing that are really exciting. It might be nice to have for this commission as sort of state of the industry or state of practitioners, state of expertise. What's cutting edge? What's new? What are things that we're considering? And I'm thinking specifically of these bicycle advisory or the bike lane advisory lanes. These are not new for people who are in the know, but they're really new for people who are not in the know. And so what are the things that we're thinking about? I think that relates really clearly to about 18 months ago, how there was a debate between putting in temporary treatments versus putting things in concrete. And it turns out best practice is to try it in paint and pylons. We need to have a way for the public to understand. That's actually the best route, is to try this temporarily and then move forward. A yearly update on what's exciting that staff is considering, I think, would be really helpful.
Great, thanks. Any others? Okay, I'm not seeing any. And of course, you can just email Kayla and me if you think of stuff later. So let's see, our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, December 16th at 7 p.m. This will also be a virtual meeting and we'll have Zoom details. So if there are no objections, I'm going to look at everyone's little square, we can adjourn our meeting.
But we will ask that you stay online.
Thank
if
you.
Commissioners can stick around, we just want to do a screenshot for our group photo for the annual report. So I'll let Commissioner Kleinman complete her sentence that the meeting is
The
adjourned.
meeting is adjourned and CTN can stop sharing as we all figure out how to smile for the Zoom camera.